press the bell icon on the YouTube app to never miss a video from News Laundry.
Hello and welcome to News Laundry Interviews. Today we're in conversation with N. Venugopal Rao. He's a journalist and he's also the nephew of Varvara Rao. And that's one of the reasons why we have him today on our show. For those of you, I'm sure a lot of you know who Varvara Rao is. He's a poet of great note. He's an activist, a very prominent activist, and he's been in jail since 2018 as what some would call a political prisoner in the Elgar Parishad case. Now, the Elgar Parishad case is linked to the Bhima Koregaon violence. Very briefly, I want to discuss this case with actually our guest today, so I won't give too much of it. But very briefly, Elgar Parishad was an event that was organized. And this event was organized on the 31st of December 2017, and it was linked to the Bhima Koregaon violence. So if you've seen the movie Court, to me, it's a bit reminiscent of that movie, because much of what has come out after the Bhima Koregaon violence is that the Pune police has claimed that slogans in this meeting or poems in this meeting or conversations in these meetings led to the violence. They've also alleged that this meeting was attended by overground Naxalites. And 3 or 4 months into investigations, they roped in a lot of activists in this investigation. They've arrested activists saying that these guys somehow instigated the violence or had something to do with the violence. So Varvara Rao was also arrested among one of these activists. He's more than 80 years old. He's a senior elderly man, and he's recently came back to news because his family has been asking for bail because his condition is deteriorated in the jail. He's also been tested positive for COVID. So my first question to you is actually, I read in the newspapers that the family was allowed to video conference with Varvara Rao yesterday for 20 minutes. Were you part of this conference also? Did you get to meet him, or did you get to chat with him, see him? And how is he doing health-wise?
I don't know how much of it can be shared because it is directed by Mumbai High Court's decision, and it's directive to Nanavati Hospital to allow us to meet him,
Okay.
and subject to hospital protocols as well as government protocols with regard to COVID patients. And because of that, Nanavati Hospital said their protocols would not allow to meet personally, and that's how they arranged this video conference. I don't know how much of it can be shared because it's a court matter. What I would like to say is, physically, he was not very well. He was frail and weak. And psychologically, it's more worrying because he was still incoherent. On July 15th, when we met him in Sir JJ Hospital, he was incoherent. He did not recognize us at that time, but yesterday he did recognize us. But when we asked something, he was not directly answering, and he was going back into his memories of 2 decades, 3 decades, or 4 decades ago. So that's that much I can say. That means his status, health status, is as it was on May 28th when he was brought to Sir JJ Hospital from Taloja jail because of electrolyte imbalance. Actually, electrolyte imbalance will cause this kind of confusion, loss of memory, and incoherence.
So before he was arrested, can you tell us how has his health deteriorated? I mean, before he went to jail, was he also suffering with bouts of forgetfulness, or was he also weak? So how has it changed over the past 2 years as a family?
Not at all. Not at all. He never had any neurological, psychological problems. He had piles, he had acidity, he had migraine, he had hypertension. At least 6 or 7 were there, but for them also, we don't know what kind of treatment, medical aid was given in Pune, Yerwada jail. But we know that in Pune jail, when he was in Pune jail, at least 3 times he was taken to Sassoon Hospital. We also don't know what was the treatment and what was the ailment. And this particular loss of memory and incoherence began only in May, June.
Of this year.
Yeah, on May 28th, when he was admitted in the hospital, the later hospital has submitted medical report to the court, and that's how we came to know that he was suffering from electrolyte imbalance. Sodium and potassium levels were dangerously low. Because of that, any medical guide, any medical textbook will tell you that lower levels of dangerous levels of potassium and sodium will lead to incoherence, loss of memory, loss of sense of time.
How is his condition been with regard to COVID? Because he's also been, with all this, he's also been diagnosed with COVID. Has he shown recovery, or how is his?
On July 16th, that was the second day in Sir JJ Hospital when we went to see him. We were allowed to go to him to the ward. So we met superintendent, and superintendent gave permission letter. We took the letter and went up to the second floor. And when we showed the letter, nurses said, we just got the information that he was tested positive, so you are not allowed to meet him. So we could not meet him. Apart from that nurses' information on COVID, we did not have, even now, yesterday's video conferencing also, there was no information on COVID.
So are the doctors there briefing you on his health or no? It appears that there's been no regular briefing to the family on how he's dealing with COVID and of course other complications that have arisen.
There was no regular briefing, and we moved the court for a regular health bulletin, and court directed Nanavati Hospital to give a medical report to them so that they will see that and they will decide whether that can be shared with family or not.
Okay. Now, I want to come to the case. Now, in this particular case, there's a letter. From what I have read, the only proof against Mr. Varvara Rao is a letter which the Pune police has said that they have found. That letter is apparently, according to them, written by Varvara Rao to Surendra Gadling, another activist who's been arrested, and it's a cryptic kind of a letter where he's saying कि आपको पैसे दिए हैं demonetization में उसका इस्तेमाल करें. Is that the only piece of evidence that the Pune police has cited so far in the arrest?
On June 6th, 2018, Pune police released 3 letters. And later in the course of time, they released another 9 letters.
This was the famous plot to kill the Prime Minister, that was leaked to the media.
Out of these 12 letters, and later they filed a 5,000-page charge sheet and another 2,500-page additional charge sheet. In all of them, it's not our family's contention or accused's contention, but several experts, including Ajay Sahni, who is forensic and defense strategy expert in the country, from him to retired police officers, retired forensic experts, and journalists who have been covering Naxalite beat for the last 3 decades, 4 decades, everybody said the so-called evidence is laughable. The so-called evidence is cooked up, fabricated.
What are the reasons?
Yeah, I will give the reason. Particularly coming to Varvara Rao's case, they have shown a letter written in Hindi to Surendra Gadling, supposedly written by Varvara Rao. Actually, at that time, in July 2018, News Laundry itself reported and exposed this letter that Varvara Rao never wrote a Hindi line. He could not write. Yeah, he is not well versed in Hindi. So this is Hindi thing is a cooked up thing. And the other letters also, many writing experts and how some lines were doctored into that, or the whole letter was cooked up. So all that, anyway, it will not, everybody said they will not stand the scrutiny of law courts. That's why trial has not started even till now. Not only us, I'm coming to the, 2 years. And okay, forget about family and forget about the accused. Sharad Pawar, who is supremo of a constituent party of the present government, on record said this is all cooked up evidence. So investigators have to be investigated. Investigators had their own vested interests. He also named them. He also named what was the vested interest. I don't want to go into detail. Actually, News Laundry itself has explored that how an outside agency was used for translating the charge sheet and what was the interest of the outside agency. So I'm not going into those details, but Sharad Pawar said he asked the government to form a special intelligence team, investigation team, to investigate the investigators. So that is the case. So that's why after 16 months, NIA has taken the case. Now again, 6 months have elapsed. In the 6 months, last 16, NIA filed a counter petition to oppose bail for Varavara Rao. In that 26-page counter note was there. In the 26 pages, they have not cited a single new allegation than what Pune police did. That means even in the 6 months, nothing, an inch has not moved.
So it's primarily on the basis of that letter that they have kept him in jail for 2 years. Yeah. A letter written in Hindi by a person who does not speak Hindi. So writing Hindi is all the more very difficult. Also, with regards to this letter, I don't know if it's been shown to you or not. Is it a typed out letter or is it handwritten?
Typed or written, I don't remember. But the language used is Shuddha. Actually, one of the Marathi literary critics analyzed it through literary criticism tools and said this language is not a language used in either Telangana or even Maharashtra. This is used in some Hindi belt.
So now Elgar Parishad, the crime in this case, so to speak, is the Bhima Koregaon violence. And Pune police has linked Elgar Parishad event to the Bhima Koregaon violence. Was he present? Was Varavara Rao present at this event? Or was he involved in organizing it? Did you know the Kabir Kala Mandir people? What is the link?
Elgar Parishad meeting, as everybody knows, it's not any private information, it's in public domain, was organized by 2 retired judges, P.B. Sawant and Kolse Patil. And it was attended by people like Jignesh Mevani, Radhika Vemula, Omar Khalid, and out of these 12 accused in Bhima Koregaon case now, except Sudhir Davle, nobody attended that meeting. Nobody ever went to Pune. Nobody has any connection with the meeting. Particularly, Varavara Rao does not have any connection with that meeting. He never went to Pune.
Actually, the organizing of it, even if he didn't attend it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Actually, his visit to Pune, he visited almost all India and everywhere. He has been a public speaker for 40 years, but he never went to Pune. For the first time, he was taken to Pune by police to put him in jail. So, with Pune or Pune's affairs, he does not have anything. And in the meeting also, as I told, the organizers are 2 judges. They don't need Varavara Rao to support them. And they on record said, we collected funds for the meeting, we organized the meeting, we invited the people. Out of 11 or 12 now with Hani Babu, 12 accused, only Sudhir Davle was present because Sudhir Davle is a cultural activist, he was a singer, and he quoted a line from a play written by Bertolt Brecht in Germany in 1930s. Now the whole case is based on that line. This is Brecht's poem. Yeah, this is a Brecht's line of 1930s Germany. Actually, this is very interesting. That play written by Brecht is named good woman of Sichuan. It's based in China. Sichuan, a state or a capital city. There, a prostitute, she is the main character, protagonist of that drama. There she says, when whole lot of injustices are happening, people are silent. And then she comes and says, if this kind of injustices are going on and people are silent, why should this city be alive? Let it be burnt. This is the line. And he read out this line, or he sang this line, and police took this, let the city be burnt.
Okay. So they took it as
yeah.
As a call to burn Bhima Koregaon.
Because city was burnt from January 2nd to January 8th. Not only Pune, many other towns in Maharashtra.
And this was the violence was actually a clash between the right-wing forces and people who were activists who were congregated there from the Ambedkar to the left.
Actually, Pune police asked the deputy mayor, under the chairmanship of deputy mayor of Pune at that time, a 10-member committee to find facts. That fact-finding committee clearly mentioned Shambhaji Bide and Milind Ekbote's names and their complicity in the whole crime and violence and arson. And an FIR was registered. A complaint was given on January 2nd, naming both of them. But that FIR and that complaint was never taken into consideration. A new FIR, a new complaint was booked 7 days later, implicating the meeting. So starting from the beginning, see, from January 2nd or January 1st, 2018, the whole case is a lot of lies and fabrications and cooked up things.
So, coming back to Varvara Rao's case, there is only this one letter which Pune police has claimed. It's a letter written in Hindi, like you said. He didn't go to Elgar Parishad. They haven't really unearthed any links of him organizing the event or being associated with Bhima Koregaon event either. Why do you think the probe reached him? If you believe that he didn't have anything to do with Elgar Parishad, he didn't even participate in the Bhima Koregaon program, or he didn't have much to do with Pune politics at all, why do you think the probe reached him in the way it has? No,
later Pune police enlarged the case.
First,
it was only the case of...
If you say that the letter is cooked up, why do you think the Pune police would want to cook up evidence against someone like Varvara Rao?
No, that's why I'm saying first it was a case of arson, a local arson. From there, they made it a criminal conspiracy so that you need not pick up only local people. You can book anybody from the globe. And from there, they enlarged the case further to urban Naxal, all India conspiracy. And from there, they enlarged it to assassination attempt of Prime Minister. So there they brought in all those who were dissenting the policies, who were siding with marginalized people for the last 3-4 decades, 5 decades, and who were maybe openly supporting Maoist politics. But here in the country, the highest court of the land, Supreme Court itself said, being a member of Maoist party is also not a crime, unless the person is associated with a particular crime and beyond reasonable doubt, if it is proved that he is associated with that crime, action. It's not just ideology, it's not just belief, it's action. Supreme Court said that. Here in Varvara Rao's case, there is no action. It's belief. He has been believing and he has been writing. He published about 50 books. He has been a public speaker for 50 years. He has been saying that the status quo has to be changed.
What is, for those of our viewers who may not have read him or are not familiar with his work, what is his core ideology? What has his work been around?
His core ideology is equality, equality of people. That is his core ideology. Liberty, equality, and fraternity are the cornerstones of Constitution of India. And his ideology is also that.
He's been a supporter of Maoist ideology.
Certainly. He thinks this ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity cannot be achieved under this status quo, under this rule. This rule is for exploitation and oppression. So to bring in a change, to bring in revolution, he has been saying to bring in revolution. Whether it is, see, if somebody is believing in Gandhian politics, it does not mean that he is part of a Gandhian party. He has been saying revolution is the only liberation for this country. Yes.
But in current times, especially when there is a rhetoric of urban Naxals, and of course we've seen that Maoist ideology have done a lot of damage also. You've seen in Chhattisgarh how innocent people have also been killed by Maoists, people who are accused of being informants. Or in general, we've seen that places that have been taken over by Maoists, it's not like they have been benign, or it's not like they have been just or with the cause. They've also inflicted they've inflicted a lot of brutalities on villagers where they live. So, I mean, in many cases where you see a villager is stuck between the state atrocity and the Maoist atrocity. In such a scenario, where did he stand on this? Did he support taking to the gun? Did he support the violent aspect of
his contention? This kind of question was posed to him several times. His contention was, even if people indulge in violence, that is not violence at all, that is only counter-violence. In this system, state and state machinery has much more capability to inflict violence. If a person who is suffering from that violence just tries to stop that violence, that is branded as violence. That was his contention. He told and has written this many times. And not only that, once when a police force who was in combing operation and went in helicopter, and that helicopter was missing, Chhattisgarh government appealed to him to give an appeal to Maoists to spare that helicopter and the Jawans who were missing there. He gave a statement, and that appeared in almost all media organizations. So when that kind of a question came, he was not supporting whatever quote unquote you were saying mindless violence. I'm not going into that debate now. See, Maoist violence, the question of quote unquote Maoist violence can be debated sometime, but not now. This is not the forum.
I think some of the things that you've said, a lot of it is also in the public domain. Like I'm reading from an Indian Express article that says that in 2005, he was an emissary for the People's War Group to broker peace between state government and Maoist organizations. And when the talks broke down, he was arrested under the Public Security Act. There's also been the Andhra Pradesh government that arrested him in 1973 as the Maintenance of Internal Security Act and stuff like that. So he's had his run-ins with the state government of Andhra Pradesh especially. What do you think is different this time?
In 1973, he was arrested for the first time. From 73 to 2014, he was arrested at least 10 to 12 times, and he was implicated in 25 cases in 45 years. All kinds of cases like this case. Murder, attempt to murder, explosives, extortions, every possible crime in IPC. But prosecution could not prove a single charge in a single case. Law courts acquitted him. Acquitted him in all 25 cases, finding him not guilty. And this time also, we are sure that same kind of crimes and allegations and charges are there. He will come out unscathed. But why we are worried more this time is during those years he was young and healthy. Now he is 80, his health is failing, and now he is tested COVID positive.
How has, through the years, though, as an activist, as someone who's always taken on people more powerful than him, as someone who's has held very strong views and stuck by them for so long, how is his family now dealing with this, having to see him to go to jail at this old age? Also, in a case which seems, in a case where there hasn't been much evidence produced against him, or in a case like, as you said, he wasn't involved much in Pune politics. How is his family coping up with this? And he has 3 daughters. If you can tell us what's going on through the families.
They are under heavy stress. Particularly, he is my maternal uncle. He is my mother's brother, and he also married my elder sister. My sister is now 72. She is also hypertensive and diabetic. Her health is not very good to go and do all these kind of errands. And they have 3 daughters, 3 of them married, but all of them under stress and worried. And at least for the last 2 months, if not for 2 years, 2 months, we are crying every day. Because for the last 4 months, we don't have any information. He has been kept incommunicado because of COVID, because of lockdown. There were no family visits. There were no lawyer visits. There were no letters. And he has been a gregarious person. He used to go out for public meetings, for public speaking, 10 days in a month. And he believes in being among people. And he writes, and he's a voracious reader. He's a prolific writer. Because for the last 4 months, he does not have people, he does not have reading facilities, he does not have writing facilities. That hampered his health. That's what we think. For these psychological problems, developing over 2 months, this is the major reason.
What is the status of the bail right now? You have appealed for the bail. What are your points for the plea? What are the points that you've made to get bail for him apart from his health? Because this is a case which is a bit serious. You've had the NIA involved, and he's accused of hatching a conspiracy to assassinate the Prime Minister. So these are very serious charges. Where is the bail process, and what have you guys appealed for?
NIA Special Sessions Court rejected his interim bail appeal. This is called interim bail application. It's not bail on technical grounds or bail on merit. This is basically based on Supreme Court's directions of March 24th to decongest jails. When we filed this case, he was not tested positive. We filed this interim bail based on 3 grounds: his age, his health, and COVID vulnerability, possibility of COVID. While the case was going on from June last week to now, he is tested positive also. But case has been dragging on in court. Finally, this August 7th court hearing is there. We don't know what is going to happen, but at least, if not on technical grounds, if not on merit, at least on health and age and COVID, court may grant bail, or if it is rejected, even High Court, we have to go to Supreme Court. There is no other way.
What is the kind of support that you got for Varvara Rao for the past few months? Have you, there were letters against activists who've been jailed. So,
yeah,
you find a lot of support, especially because in the country today, there is a strong narrative which is leave alone Naxals or urban Naxals, but even people who support a Marxist ideology or a Maoist ideology is one step ahead. But even people who support these are seen as criminals, they are seen as people who are not wanted. So in this atmosphere especially, what is the kind of responses that you've got?
See, the atmosphere is very bleak. Even those students and youth and activists, intellectuals who were against CAA are also branded as urban Naxals. Opposing CAA is not a Marxist thing. It's basically on religious grounds. So that kind of bleak atmosphere is there. But then we have three channels to fight. One, judiciary, we have been doing that. Second, political establishment. In political establishment, we have been making appeals starting from president to Maharashtra chief minister to Maharashtra home minister. We made many appeals. There is some movement there. Some parties or some people in some political parties are supporting our cause. Third is civil society. We have been appealing to civil society, and civil society response is fantastic. It's more than what we expected. From international quarters, from various countries, demonstrations are happening. A social media website, a site, started a campaign for Varavar Rao, release of Varavar Rao, and asked people to translate his poems and recite and post on Facebook. In 2 days, his poetry was translated into 24 languages: Italian, French, German, Irish. So that kind of response is there from people. We believe, Varavar Rao used to believe, that it is only people's creativity and people's power that will make changes. And that is being proven.
My last question to you is, personally, what do you make of this whole urban Naxal narrative, especially with regard to the Bhima Koregaon case? How do you see it?
See, Vivek Agnihotri brought this term, this phenomenon into light. And if you read Vivek Agnihotri's book, whoever opposes me, whoever does not accept me is an urban Naxal. He named all top television channels as urban Naxal channels. He named vice chancellor of a university as urban Naxal. He named everybody who opposed his contention. So in that kind of atmosphere, I personally think it is not, it is just like McCarthyism in US. In US, they said un-American activities, and even Charlie Chaplin was charged like that. In India, we have been seeing 1930s Germany, reenactment of 1930s Germany or 1950s United States. And Germany passed that, United States passed that, India will also pass this.
Thank you so much for speaking to me.
Thank you, Manisha.